Hey fam, what's cracking? And welcome to the 5 W's that you need in less than 10 minutes. I am so glad you guys joined me again. How are you doing? So for the people who have not been here, okay, so before we get started, please like, share, and subscribe. JollyStudios@gmail.com, www.jollystudios.com. So let me put this banner up here so they know what we're talking about. Okay, for the people who haven't been here. So once a week, I do a chapter a week in the Bible. Currently, we are on Genesis 6, and we do this within 10 minutes. Now listen. I am not here to be the instructor. I am a student. We are students together. The reason why I'm doing this is because I am noticing that now, in this stage of my life, I have read the Bible numerous times. But guess what? Reading it and studying it is two different things. So now I'm actually studying it. And now I'm learning all this stuff that I skimmed over. A lot of stuff. Okay, so like I said, before we get started, please like, share, and subscribe, and let's talk about it. All right, so let's talk about the topic, or let's talk about the title. When God's heart broke, humanity's last chance. Don't worry, we're going to talk about it in a minute. So before we get with that, let's do a recap of chapter 5. Now, last week, you guys, in chapter 5, we discussed the lineage of Adam. Okay, now to do a real quick recap, you have Adam, and you had Cain, and you had Abel. Now, of course, Cain unalived Abel, and then God blessed Adam and Eve with another son, which was Seth. And then it is now Seth's lineage that is in God's favor that we'll be talking about from here on out. Yes, you'll hear about Cain, but because Cain unalived Abel, he's not in God's grace. So you will hear about him. You'll hear mentions about Cain, but it won't be the same as how when he speaks about Seth and his children. Okay, so let's start talking about chapter 6. Now, let's get into it. So let's first talk about who we're all talking about in chapter 6. Well, we're talking about the Creator, God. And listen, before we get, God, okay, it flew off in front of me. Before we get started talking about God, listen, y'all, let's talk about it. I don't know if you guys read the Bible like I do, but currently right now I'm in the Old Testament and I'm reading a lot. But the one thing I do notice in the Old Testament, God back in those days, he actually spoke, did visual things, did things to let you know that he was there. Now keep this in mind. I'm not being disrespectful to anyone. I'm not saying that God doesn't do that now. But back then, we're talking about the burning of the bush. We're talking about manna coming from heaven. I think that it's interesting that even though God showed himself back then in those ways, these people still questioned who he was. That's just a curious thing. Kind of makes you think, if God was here now, would we believe? Or would we be questioning him as well? Okay, just wanted to put that out there. Okay, so besides God being in this story, also we have the sons of God, which are interpreted by some angels, others as powerful human rulers and descendants of Seth. Okay, we'll come back around to that in a minute. Now, the other people who are talked about in this chapter are the daughters of men. Listen who they are. Generally understood as human women, possibly descendants of Cain. And we'll get into that in a minute. Now, we also want to talk about who else will be talked about in this chapter. And let me hope I pronounce this right. Okay, which is the Nephilim, which are described as mighty men or giants existing before and after the flood. Now, if you want to know who God is talking about, remember that story about David and Goliath? Goliath, he was one of these, a Nephilim, okay? A mighty man or a giant. All right, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. I don't know if we'll get into it in this chapter, but they're starting to touch the surface so you'll understand how these people came into fruition. All right, so also in this chapter, we'll talk about Noah, a righteous man who found favor in God's eyes of the Lord. And remember, Noah is a descendant of Adam. You'll have to go back in chapter 5. That's where we talked about the lineage of Adam. Noah is a part of the lineage of Adam. Also, too, Noah's family, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. They're all the lineage of Seth, which is the lineage of Adam. Okay? So now let's talk about what? What are we talking about here? Okay. Humanity multiplies, but so does the wickedness and corruption. Well, that's one of the reasons why God brought Noah here, because, of course, well, you know the story, of course. God got tired of all the sinning, which came back from what? Adam and Eve. And first murder, Cain. So all this stuff was going on even from the beginning. And because it was becoming so rampant, God just said, I'm tired. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wipe the slate clean. And that's when Noah got involved. Okay? And of course, we'll hear the story later on in the Old Testament. All right. Also, too, the sons of God take wives from the daughters of men, leading to strange offspring, Nephilim. So now we understand where those offspring came from. The sons of God take up with the daughters of men. All right. Remember, the sons of God are Seth's children, and the daughters of men are Cain's children. Now keep this in mind. Seth's children, they're under God's grace. Cain's children, they're there, but they're not there. So now we know where these giants came from. Okay? Strange offspring. Okay? Also, too, in what? God observed that every intention of man's heart is a evil continuously. Okay? That's why he destroyed it. God decides to destroy all living creatures with the flood. That's where Noah comes in. Noah is chosen to survive because of his righteousness. He was a man of God. He listened to what God told him, and he honored God and loved him. And that's why God honored him and honored his family. Also, too, God instructs Noah to build the ark, massive wooden vessel, to save his family and pairs of animals. Of course, we know 2 pairs of each, right? That's what he did because he knew that he was going to have Noah get into the ark, have all these 2 pairs of everything. God destroys the world, and then Noah comes back, and everybody is replenished by what is in the ark. Now, let's talk about the when. When did all this take place? The event took place in the pre-flood world, several generations after Adam and before Abraham. So he gives you specifically when this happened. After Adam, before Abraham. So you know we're going to get into it in the Old Testament. This is going to be good. The chapter sets the stage for the flood, which comes in Genesis 7. So make sure you come back next week because we're going to get in depth about the flood, the ark, and how it was built and what materials it was built with. All right. Now, let's talk about the where. The story unfolds in the ancient world before the geriatric, I can't even talk, before the geographic regions we know today. Geographic regions we know today. The setting is broadly the earth, described as filled with violence and corruption. So once again, God is coming back to saying, the reason why I destroyed the earth is because of sin. But we know where sin came from. Sin started from Adam and Eve, and then it moved on from Cain, where Cain unalives Abel. Then they have offspring, and then the offspring continues to be corrupt. Okay? Now, let's talk about the why. Because humanity had become utterly corrupt and violent, God's spirit world, not contained with man forever, showing divine patience, had limits. So God got tired. He got tired. He loved him, but he got tired. And he said, I'm going to clean this slate. We're gonna start this all over again. The flood serves as a reset, wiping away evil to begin anew through Noah and his family. Once again, that's why there was two of everything. He wanted this world to be restarted all over again. And then, last but not least, it also demonstrates God's justice and mercy, judgment for sin, but grace for Noah. So, you know what that basically tells us? When we do what God asks us to do, even when things are happening around us, He will protect us. Even the things that are going on now, God will protect us. I know it seems like He's not here, but He's most definitely here. Okay? He's here. He's just in the background watching everything. Okay? So listen, we got through that, y'all, within 10 minutes. I mean, I can't believe it. So please, if you have a chance, go back and read chapter 6, because if you're going to come back next week, I want you to be able to have gotten caught up with us. And don't just read chapter 6. You might want to go back to 1 and go all the way to 6 so you can catch up to us with 7. Because I'm going to tell you, by the time we're done with this, there's going to be certain things you're going to be able to quote, you're going to be able to remember. I'm going to tell you, I've read the Bible at least 5 or 6 times, and I'm ashamed to say that all these things I'm learning this time, I read it. It didn't mean that I studied it. It just meant that I read it. So listen, y'all, before you leave, please like, share, and subscribe. jollystudios@gmail.com, www.jollystudios.com. I appreciate you guys coming on this journey with me. Thank you so much. And guess what? We'll see you next week. Have a good one. Peace.